Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So this week I am going to do a reading vlog. I haven't done one of these on my channel yet and I love watching them. I love when other people do this style of video, so I wanted to try it as well because I think it would be fun. But yes, so I wanted to do a reading vlog for a couple of new releases that I recently received, and those are The Paradise Problem by Christina and Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. So I'm planning on reading these two books this week. I've actually already started The Paradise Problem last night, so you'll see a little bit of footage of that, and that I'll insert here, and I do have my first update for that as well. And then Ali Hazelwood's Not in Love just came out a couple of days ago, and I had that on pre-order, so that arrived. I'm so excited to read this. You guys know I love Ali Hazelwood. Has quickly become one of my absolute favorite authors this year, so I'm really excited for this one. This has been a highly anticipated new release for me, so I'm very excited. Yeah, I just can't wait to read this book. But for now, I'm reading The Paradise Problem by Christina, and this was on my June TBR. It was chosen as one of the prompts. It looks super summery, so this is the perfect time to read this. It's very tropical, and this is also a new author for me. I have not read anything by Christina. She is one of those authors that is a favorite amongst a lot of people. A lot of people love her books, so I'm excited to be reading this one. And as you know, I'm super excited about Ali Hazelwood's new release as well. So yeah, so we're gonna attempt to do a reading vlog. I hope you guys like that. Also in this vlog, I kind of want to include another Brynne Weaver book signing event for her Leather and Lark release. I did already read Leather and Lark earlier this month, the second it came out, and I loved it. It was amazing. So she's having another event this week where she's kind of doing like a Q&A and then a book signing for her Leather and Lark new release. So I'm gonna go get my book signed, and this is happening in Oak Brook at the Barnes & Noble there in the Chicagoland suburbs. So we're gonna drive out there, me and my husband, and we're gonna go see her again and get my copy of Leather and Lark signed. So I'm going to try to include that in this vlog. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to record any of the Q&A, but if I am, I certainly will. And I'll add that to this vlog as well. So this is kind of like a new releases sort of reading vlog slash book signing event. I already started reading this last night, and I have a few thoughts. I'm about a quarter of the way in, a little bit further than a quarter of the way in. So this book starts off with following the main character, Anna. It's a dual POV between Anna and Liam, and he's the love interest. It's kind of a fake marriage of convenience trope. She starts off being in pre-med in college. They meet in college, and she's actually friends with his brother. She's kind of struggling to make ends meet. She wants to live on campus, and she's looking for like a cheap apartment. Liam, on the other hand, is the son of like a billionaire grocery store tycoon. Wants to major in anthropology, which is not what his father wants him to do. His father wants him to run the family business. He wants him to be the CEO of their grocery store chain. So he's kind of like veering off the path. So his dad actually cuts him off financially. So he's also like doesn't have access to his money either. And he needs a cheap place to live on campus as well so he can finish his degree. So he finds this like family housing that he wants to live in because it's like nice and like it's on campus, and he just wants to live there. But in order to live in this like family housing, he needs to have a wife and he needs to be married. And then Anna needs a cheap apartment, basically. So Liam's, I think it's his younger brother, introduces them because they both have similar needs. They can help each other. And in order to move forward with that, they get married. It's a marriage of convenience, and then they get divorced after like they're done with their degrees or whatever. So they did that. They got married and then they lived together for 2 years while they were working on their degrees. They didn't really spend a lot of time together. Like the author made it pretty clear that, like, you know, he was focusing on getting his degree as fast as possible. He wasn't really like spending time with her. They were just kind of like cohabitating in the same apartment, even though they were married. And then they quickly got divorced when they were done with their degrees. And then we fast forward 3 years in the future. So now that we're 3 years in the future, we find out that Liam has been lying to his family the entire time that he's still married to her. He didn't like actually tell his family that they're divorced, because he found out that there's a clause for him. In order to get his inheritance, he needs to be married for 5 years. His grandfather has like this thing about like being happily married, and he's very family focused and like that kind of thing. So he wants them, in order to get their inheritance, he wants them all to be married for like at least 5 years and like really focus on their marriages, I guess. I don't remember exactly how like he found out, like how it was determined that they're still actually married and they're not actually divorced. And I think it has something to do with Anna not reading like the contract, not reading the prenup, not reading like the divorce papers, whatever. She just kind of like signed the contracts at the time, and she didn't really pay attention to details. That's kind of like how the author is portraying her personality to be. Like she's more of like, I mean, she was supposed to be pre-med, but she ends up changing her major to fine arts because she's like not the pre-med personality. She's more of like a free spirit, doesn't really pay attention to details. She's like not that kind of girl that's like what you would normally consider who is like super buttoned up, super like focused and career driven, like a pre-med person would be in order to be a doctor. Yeah, she's not those things. The author makes that very, very clear at the beginning of this book. Whereas Liam is like the opposite. He's very detail oriented. He makes contracts for everything. You know, he just is like that kind of person. So anyway, so 3 years in the future, we find out he's been lying to his family that they're still married, and his younger sister is actually getting married on a private island somewhere, and his family wants him to bring his wife because apparently they haven't met her yet, and now he needs her to come to this wedding with him in order to sell this lie that like they're still married and they're happily married, because he wants to get his inheritance, which is like hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. So he goes and finds her again, and then we find out that she's not actually pre-med. She switched her major and she's fine arts. She loves to paint. She's not this girl that he, you know, has been selling to his family. She's somebody completely different. But nonetheless, he agrees to pay her to do this with him, and she obviously needs the money for her dad's medical bills, so she agrees. So the characters so far are pretty likable. To me, Liam is a little bit more likable than Anna. Anna is just kind of coming off as like, I don't know, I don't love her like lack of attention to detail. So his name is actually Liam Weston, and he's like obviously the heir to the Weston's grocery chain, but like everybody calls him West as a nickname, and I guess she didn't know that West was a nickname and not his real name, and that his name was actually Liam, which I found to be really, really weird and a little bit unrealistic, because like you're married to this guy, you had to like get a marriage license, you had to sign documents, you had to get married in front of a judge, and the judge like says his name. I just feel like she would have known what his real name is. So that was a little bit like not realistic in my mind, and I just didn't love that detail of it. But I guess the author is trying to portray that like she's just not this detail oriented person. Like she doesn't even know his name, even though she's lived with him for 2 years and they were actually married, and then they got divorced, and then, you know, she signed a bunch of contracts with his name on it and her name on it. So it's like, it just was a little bit unrealistic to me, but he still seems like a really stand-up guy. So I'm liking his character a lot. She's growing on me. I'm currently at the part where they've like flown to the island, and like they've already attended like the cocktail party with the family. The family is cutthroat, not gonna lie. Like I would struggle being in her position. Like if I was her, I would struggle being in that position. The judgmentalness of his mother and like how mean they are to each other, it's harsh. Okay, they're harsh. They're a harsh family. So I don't blame him for like not wanting to be part of that family and like kind of like do his own thing. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now in the book. We're a little bit more than a quarter of the way in. I'm on page 112, 113. And there's already a little bit of attraction starting to happen with them. Like they're noticing each other because they're having to like share the overwater bungalow that they're staying in. So it is super tropical. They're on a tropical island. I love the summer vibes of this book right now. And so far I'm really into the story. So that's the first update that I have about the Paradise Problem. Currently, I don't know if this is going to be a 5 stars. It's not really reading like a 5-star yet, but it's definitely interesting and fun to read. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep reading this book and check in with you when I'm maybe like halfway through. All right, so it's the next day and I'm a little bit further in this book. I'm about 3/4 of the way in. I'm on chapter 23, what page is this? 205. Not 3/4, 2/3 of the way in on page 205. In this book, and right now I'm actually really enjoying it. So I was worried a little bit that I wasn't gonna like Anna from like the first couple of chapters, as I mentioned in my last update, but I'm actually really liking her. She is hilarious. First of all, like her inner monologue, dialogue, like whatever you call that, is hilarious. Her jokes are hilarious. Some of the references in this book, like pop culture references, like to the Barbie movie, I really enjoyed. I love that. She's actually really like loyal and kind and sweet as well, and I really love that in a character. And she's very witty too, so like their banter is good. He's more of like a sweet guy, kind of like a golden retriever guy, West, in this story, but that's fine because I love those kinds of characters. So I'm still really loving it. He's kind of like dealing with the emotional stuff with his family because his family is like absolutely terrible. Like his parents, the way that they are written in here, like you will hate them. I absolutely hate them, but like those are the characters, you know, so they're meant to be like that. But yeah, for people you're meant to hate, the author did a really great job writing them. So I like that. I'm really enjoying that. They're in the point in their relationship where they're still kind of like figuring out that they're having feelings for each other. It hasn't been like said out loud yet, but they're having like feelings for each other, and the tension is really good. I'm really enjoying this book. Right now as it stands, I think I'm kind of at like 4.25, maybe 4.5. I mean, we'll see, because I don't really know like what the third act breakup is going to be like, or even if there is one in this book, but I am a little bit worried about that. But right now as it stands, I'm kind of leaning more 4.5 because I'm just having a really good time reading this and I'm really enjoying it, and I really like them both now. I mean, who knows, maybe it'll be like a 4.75 or a 5 even. I don't know. Like, I don't know the turn of events that are going to happen. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to keep reading tonight. I'm probably not going to read too much more tonight because we're leaving for the Brynne Weaver event here in a few minutes. So I'm not sure what time we'll be back. But I wanted to do just a quick little check-in and let you guys know how far I'm at and what my thoughts are so far on this book, and just that I'm really enjoying it. Like, I'm having a good time reading it. It's a fast read. It feels very bingeable to me. So if you're looking for like a quick bingeable book, this probably could be it. Keep reading. I'll keep you guys posted. I'll probably check in tomorrow and see how far we get. Okay, so I'm back home now and I finished this book, and I actually had a really good time reading this book. It was really fun. It definitely had the summer vibes that I was looking for. So during my last update, I believe I was saying that they were at the part where they're kind of like realizing they're having feelings for each other but hadn't admitted that to each other yet. Well, they finally do end up doing that, obviously. And it's really sweet. Like, I actually really liked their relationship. I still ended up liking the characters towards the end of the book. Like, I liked them At first I was a little bit like on the fence with Anna, but she turned it around. She definitely became a lot more likable throughout the entire book and towards the end, and I just really enjoyed the story. There was a third act breakup in this book, but it wasn't terrible. However, I will say that I did really enjoy the family drama in this book. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of like greediness from the rich family, like over their inheritances, and you know, people spilling secrets. It was just drama, drama, drama. So it was fun. I really enjoyed it throughout. I had the summer vibes that I liked. Overall, I think I'm going to stick with my 4.25 rating for this. It wasn't quite the 5-star because it just didn't give you that 5-star feeling. And I was kind of teetering between like 4.25, 4.5, whatever. I think I'm going to settle on 4.25. Yeah, so that's my final thoughts on this. So last time I left you, I was kind of heading out to go see Brynne Weaver to get my copy of Leather and Lark signed.
Did Sloan and Rowan come to you first, and then everyone kind of grew out in that?
Yeah. I had an idea that I wanted to do a trilogy. I had an idea that I wanted it to follow some brothers, and then once I started actually writing, then the rest of the characters kind of like came to life out of what I call like the sparkly brain suit. But I'm looking for my husband because he's gonna be like, oh my god, not that term, I hate that term. But yeah, they just sort of emerged in scenes and like bits of dialogue, and yeah, came to life that way. So I didn't like 100% know what I was gonna do with Leather and Lark when I was writing B&B. I kind of had a thought it would be Marriage of Convenience, but beyond that, I didn't really know. And it's sort of like the same with Silent Sparrow. It's taken a slightly different turn than what I originally anticipated. Like I knew it would be like small town and doctor and circus performer, but now it's kind of like evolving as I go.
That's fun. Yeah. It's fun to have your book surprise you.
Yeah, exactly. Also terrifying.
Yeah. Totally understand that.
I do kind of want to go through my thoughts on this book a little bit because I read this earlier this month. I loved this book. I don't think it was as good as Butcher and Blackbird. Like Butcher and Blackbird had kind of like more humor in it. It was a little bit more kind of like fun and different. Whereas this one was more focused on just the romance and the relationship building between Lark and Lachlan. It was still a 5-star read. It was really, really sweet and romantic. This follows Lachlan, who is Rowan's from the first book brother, and Lark, who is Sloane's best friend. So the backstory here is that Lark and Sloane went to the same boarding school together, but she also kind of does also become a serial killer herself. But she doesn't call herself that. She calls herself a multiple deleter because she just likes to like delete people who have wronged her off of the planet. And she also comes from like this rich family who sometimes also has messes that need to be cleaned up. And so that's where Lachlan comes into the picture. Lachlan is Rowan's brother. I believe he's the older brother. And he is a contract killer actually. And he's also hired to like clean up those messes. So that is actually their first meeting. The first time they meet is when Lark kind of deletes somebody into a river and then calls her family to get like the scene cleaned up, and then Lachlan is the person who is brought onto the scene, and then he's like working to clean up the scene. So because of her former trauma, Lark does not like dark places. She does not like tight places. I don't think it's claustrophobia, but it's like dark spaces, I think. She's got a thing with dark spaces. But in order to get her off the scene, Lachlan actually ends up putting her in the trunk of his car to get her off the scene without like being seen. That doesn't go over well. She escapes from the trunk while he's driving. She gets him in trouble with her family, and he's kind of ends up being screwed later because, you know, their biggest client, he kind of upsets them because you know, he locked her in the trunk and she didn't like it. Yeah, so Lachlan gets in trouble for that. He is then, you know, kind of like working off his debt to the guy that he works for as a contract killer. And, you know, he kind of can't quit even though he wants to retire. But because he did like that major screw up, cost him a lot of money, he's kind of stuck working for this guy and he can't retire. So they didn't recognize each other the first time they met. They meet again at the party, and you know, there's a little bit of an attraction between them. But then they realize who the other person is and become enemies. So then we find out that Lark's family is actually suspecting Rowan, and I believe they suspect both Rowan and Lachlan of doing something against their family, and they essentially want to kill them. And Lark can't let that happen because, you know, Sloane is her best friend. That would be devastating. So she can't let that happen. So her and her aunt kind of come up with this idea that if she marries Lachlan and convinces her family that they're actually in love and he's a part of their family, they're not going to kill them. So they do their wedding, they're in this fake marriage, and they dislike each other, but they're doing it to protect the people they love. So that's kind of like where their relationship starts to escalate because they have to spend time together, they have to get to know each other. That's when he finds out that she's also a serial killer. Yeah, it's just a lot of interesting little things that they find out about each other. And even though they don't like each other that much, there's still like that attraction between them. It was more about the development of their relationship. There are still a lot of like funny scenes in this. I just didn't think it was quite as funny as the first book, but still definitely a 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed it. I loved the characters. I loved both of them. I really enjoyed the marriage of convenience aspect or fake marriage aspect of it. The writing was still really, really good. The character development was good. I just loved the process of them like getting to know each other while they're kind of like, you know, living in the same house, and you just find out these crazy things about your partner that you had no idea about. Obviously, she knows he's a contract killer from the beginning. He didn't know she was a serial killer from the very beginning, but obviously like his brother is one, and so it's like it's not a new thing to him. It's not a super big shock. He is kind of like shocked at like how she does it and like how she keeps her trophies. I thought was kind of funny, but yeah, it was really, really interesting. I loved it. It was still funny. I had fun reading this. It was overall a really good read. So I rated it 5 stars. So that's the other new release that I read this month. And I believe the third book of this is going to follow Fionn, the younger brother, the youngest of the 3 brothers. And it's called Scythe and Sparrow, something like that. But yeah, so that's going to be coming out next year. So I can't wait to read that one as well. So the next book I started for this vlog is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. This is actually very different than what I was expecting. And there is a note in the beginning of this from Ali Hazelwood. I'm actually going to read this to you because I think it's important to keep this in mind before you read this book, because it is not a rom-com the way that like her other books are. And I think a lot of people would probably have that expectation, but this is not the same. Dear reader, I just wanted to drop a quick note and let you know that Not in Love is tonally a little different from the works I've published in the past. Rue and Eli have dealt with and still deal with the fallout from issues such as grief, food insecurity, and child neglect. They are eager to make a connection but are not sure how to go about it except through a physical relationship. The result, I think, is less of a rom-com and more of an erotic romance. Rue and Eli's story has, of course, a happily ever after, but it also contains some serious themes, and I wanted to give you a heads up so you know what to expect. Love, Ali. So yes, so I read that in the beginning before I started reading the book, and I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. And it is definitely very tonally different. Right now, I'm about halfway through the book. I'm on page 180, and this is definitely different than the other books that I read by her, whereas the other books would be like kind of like funny, more lighthearted, women in STEM, you know, kicking ass. Yes, there's love, there's romance, there's all that stuff, right? So this follows the main character, Rue and Eli, and Rue is a woman in STEM. She is still like, she's like an engineer, like a food engineer or something, where she's trying to develop maybe like, I think it's like a coating for produce, like a, maybe like a preservative or something, I don't know. Yeah, but she works for like this startup company, and then Eli comes in and his company actually buys out the loan for her company. So they're technically trying to like acquire their company, and potentially like steal their tech and their patents and stuff like that. I don't really know how it works, but that's what they're doing. Rue is not like a happy, bubbly character. She's like a lot more reserved. She's a lot more withdrawn. She's like, she considers herself kind of like socially awkward and like weird. And her traumas aren't like fully, like they're just starting to be explained at this point. They're not like fully explained yet. He's dealing with some traumas of his own, but he's really, really attracted to her for some reason. Like the fact that she's so mysterious and kind of like, you know, withdrawn and stuff like that. So he's like really into that. So their relationship starts off as first being like purely physical. The first time they meet is like through a hookup app, and they basically meet to hook up together. It doesn't end up happening. And they see each other the next day when the announcement is made that her company's loan has been bought out by this other company, and he's one of the 4 founders of that private equity firm. I think they're like a private equity firm or something like that. Eli and his colleagues are basically having to interview all of the project heads. She thinks he's now the enemy because he's trying to like hostily take over her company, and she's friends with like the founder of her company. They've known each other for a long time and she's loyal to her. So she thinks that this is kind of like a hostile takeover of them trying to get like their tech and steal their information and stuff like that, which doesn't seem to be like what's happening right now, but we will see what happens. She doesn't really want anything to do with him at first, but then their like physical attraction kind of like takes precedent, and the tension and the buildup to that was really, really good so far. And the general like tension between them is really good. So the writing is good, but it is not like a happy-go-lucky humorous book. It's definitely different than that. It's a lot more serious than that, but it is absolutely very interesting. I'm not sure where it's standing right now. I don't know like what kind of rating I'm thinking for this. I think it's too soon to tell because like there's just so many more things that need to happen and need to be kind of like revealed, because we don't know that much about Rue quite yet. So I don't really know like where I stand with this book rating wise. I think I'm just going to give it a little bit more time and maybe see further into the book how I feel, and hopefully with the next check-in I'll have like a better idea, or maybe I'll even finish the book tonight. I'm not sure. Hello, it is the next day now. I have officially finished this book. I finished it this morning, and I have a lot of thoughts about this book. So first of all, this book, and Ali Hazelwood speaks about this herself. She even wrote a note at the beginning of the book. This is very different than what her normal writing is like. This is not a fluffy, happy kind of rom-com. This is not a bubblegum pink romance as this cover may suggest, okay? This is an emotional book following 2 characters who are dealing with a lot of trauma. This is a serious book. There is a lot of romance. There is a lot of spice in this book. So if you don't like to read spice, this is like 60-70% spice, I would say, then this book is not for you. However, the emotion that is in this book is written so incredibly well. And the storytelling in this book was done so, so well. I literally couldn't put it down. I just wanted to keep reading. I wanted to know what's happening. I wanted to see how they end, how they work everything out. I absolutely loved Eli. He's like just so caring, sweet, acts of service kind of guy. Rue is, yeah, she is socially awkward. She has a hard time with people. She doesn't have a lot of connections. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She's not that trusting of people. It's just, there's a lot of trauma that they're both dealing with. And so last I checked in, I was about halfway through. Yeah, they were kind of going through this, what was described as like a hostile takeover. We discover a lot more secrets along the way as to what's actually going on behind the scenes. So that's very interesting. The characters themselves were so well developed, so interesting, so like complicated and complex, and I think Ali Hazelwood did such an amazing job writing that. She did such an amazing job writing the tension between them, just the development of their relationship, the progression of their relationship, and then finally the ending, and that was just incredible. I absolutely loved the ending of this. I even loved the epilogue of this. There are mixed reviews on this book. Some people did not like it for different reasons. However, I thought that the emotional aspect of this was so good, so it was just like I wasn't sure really where this was going to go, but it all just kind of got tied up in the end really, really well, and that's why I'm giving it a 5-star. She is an incredible author, and you know, I love her range also. She's trying a different type of writing here. This is not like her usual type of writing, which, you know, I'm so happy for her. I'm glad that she's trying that and she's like really succeeding in my mind. I think she's succeeding. I think she's doing a great job. She already wrote, like, she's generally writes happy rom-coms, you know. This is kind of like a sad, serious romance, and she still knocked it out of the park. She also wrote Bride. She wrote, you know, a paranormal fantasy, and she knocked that out of the park. I think she's really a well-rounded author, and I really like her. So I ended up rating Not in Love 5 stars, and I really, really enjoyed this book. That's my review of this one. So we read 2 books in this vlog. I just went over this one, and this one, you probably remember my final thoughts on this one. I also really, really liked this one. I rated this one 4.25. This was very summery, very fun to read. Fake kind of marriage of convenience trope, which is always fun to read. I like the characters in this one as well. I didn't like the main character in this one quite as much. However, I grew to like her throughout the book, and you know, everything got also really nicely wrapped up in this one. So these are the 2 books I read in this vlog. I also did a quick little review of Leather and Lark and got my book signed by Brynne Weaver, as you saw. So those are my thoughts on these recent new releases. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these and what your thoughts were, and also how you feel about the different style of writing from Ali Hazelwood. That's all I have for you today. As always, all my links are down below to my Instagram, Goodreads, and TikTok. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It would really help my new channel, and I really appreciate you guys watching and being here with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.